Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aditi, Dubey, and I'm going to discuss my topic, that is budgeting as a political process, power, priority, and public accountability. So, we'll start our conversation with a question that what really a budget means. So, when we hear the term budget, we often think of numbers, spreadsheet, and calculations. But in reality, a government budget is much more than that. So we can say that a budget is a mirror of society's values, and it tells us what matters, who matters, and what gets ignored. So every single time when a government decides to spend more on highways instead of hospitals or defense instead of education, it is making a political choice, not just the financial one. So we can say that budgeting is not neutral, it is deeply political. Now, talking about the illusion of neutrality, that why budgets are inherently political. So, see, there is this common belief that budgets are technical and objective, and they are just about income expenditure. But this is very important, that who decides what is important, and even the most data driven budget reflects the ideologies, that what kind of society we want, and the priorities of people, like the growth versus welfare, the power, that who has influence. So when it comes to economists, they talk about the efficient allocation of money, so they're still making the value judgment questions. So in simple terms, we can say that numbers don't speak for themselves, people speak through numbers. Now, talking about the power dynamics, that who controls the money. See, now comes a crucial question, that who actually decides how much or how public money is spent. So there are several key players. The first one is executive, those are government and ministers. They draft the budget and set the priorities, and they have a huge influence because they decide what get proposed. And second one is legislature, the parliament. They're supposed to debate and approve the budget, but often due to the lack of expertise and time, they may just approve what's given. Okay. And the third one is some national governments. These are local and state bodies. They manage large part of spending, especially in federal system like India, but they often depend on central funds. And the fourth one is international actors, the IMF and World Banks, and the donor agencies that can influence the policies, especially in developing countries. So it means power is not equally distributed. Some actors have more control over the purse strings than others. Now, talking about the setting priorities that reflects the societal values and needs. See, a budget clearly answers one question, that what kind of society we are building, right? It means that government constantly face trade-offs like healthcare versus infrastructure, education versus defense, welfare versus economic growth, and these choices are influenced by political ideology, pressure from interest groups, and the electoral consideration. And also, there's something called budgetary incrementalism, that is, old programs keep getting funding while new ones are still struggling. So this is what budgetary incrementalism is. Now we can talk about that who needs the counts, right? like see, this is where things gets very real, that not everyone's needs are equally represented. Like there are still some sections in our society, women, marginalized communities, poor households, and disabled individuals, who often budgets overlook these groups. And that's why ideas like gender budgeting, participatory budgeting are important. Like for example, when citizens are directly involved in deciding spendings, more focuses goes to basic needs like sanitation, health, education, and outcomes become more equitable, right? So these are the factors. Now, talking about the role of stakeholders, from lobbyists to citizens. See, budgeting is influenced by many groups like corporate and lobby groups, because they have money and influence, and they can shape policies in their own favor. And also the civil society NGOs, because they analyze budgets, they represent marginalized voices, and they increase the awareness as well. And the third one is citizens. Usually they are least involved, but they're most affected ones. So it means that the more citizens participate, the more democratic the budget becomes, right? Now the third perspective is public accountability, where things often fail. So we can say that a good budget is not just about planning, it is about accountability. For accountability, we need transparency, that is clear information, oversight, that is to check the misuse patterns, and third one is participation, that is the citizen involvement. But in reality, many countries don't share enough data, and informations are too complex for common people, and also corruption leads to massive losses. Examples like only a small percentage of countries provide enough information for their meaningful public scrutiny, right? Now, I've also mentioned in my presentation some case studies, like uh, the case study of US. Like, to understand budgeting as a political process in action, we can consider the 2023 US debt ceiling crisis. Like in January 2023, the US hits its debt ceiling. Treasury begins extraordinary measures to continue paying obligation, with Congress debates and Republican demand spending cuts in exchange for raising the limit. And in April and May 2023, negotiation intensified, and May 2023, the bipartisan deal is reached, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and it suspends the debt ceiling until 2025. And the fourth one is political fallout, that the crisis exposed deep fractures within the Republican caucus and weakened the speaker leadership, and demonstrated how budgetary tools can be weaponized for partisan leverage, with real consequences to public trust and economic stability, right? So we can see that budget conflicts can become political crisis. Just away we have seen the example of US, right? So disagreements over spending can lead to a major conflict between political parties, and these conflicts can affect the economy, public services, as well as the political stability in the nation, right? So budgets are not just plans, they can become the battleground of power, right? Now, talking about the question that how can we make budgets more accountable for the citizens. So here are some practical ways, like through budget literacy, that we can teach people how budget works. Second one is participatory budgeting, that let citizens decide the spending of money, right? And the third one is civil society monitoring, like the independent checks on budgets. And fourth one is digital tools and open data that makes information accessible for the public, right? Now we can see the key takeaways: empowering the public in the budgetary process. So we can see that budgets are never neutral, and they reflect the power, priorities, and politics. And without accountability, power gets concentrated. And in budgeting, citizens' participation can transform the whole outcome very easily. And a true democratic budget is one that is transparent, inclusive, and answerable to people. So, at the end, we can say that a budget is not just about money, it is about who lives, improve, and whose voices are heard, and whose futures are shaped. Thank you so much.